Hi guys, so today I am talking about something that I never thought that I'd talk about in person, and that is about three novels in verse. That is right. Somehow this year I have read three novels in verse, despite the fact that I am not always the biggest fan of novels in verse, and having read these three, there are some things that have definitely stuck out to me about how these novels will or won't work for me. And they're also about a lot of different subject material. So if you're looking for some new and interesting reads, this is kind of going to go all over the place. Two are, I think one is technically middle grade and two are teen, but that line is amorphous anyway, so who cares? The first one that I'm going to talk about is American Ace by Marilyn Nelson. I'm going to be talking about these in the order in which I read them, and then kind of going to wrap it all up at the end. So American Ace is about a boy from a very Italian-American family who discovers, along with the rest of his family, that his father's father was not the man who raised them and was the father of the rest of his siblings, this boy's aunts and uncles. And in fact, his grandfather was a member of the Tuskegee Airmen, and he was African American. And so this family is really kind of thrown into this kind of racial questioning of, like, we thought we were Italian American this whole time. What does it mean to be a African American and have this, closeness with, African American history, kind of right after the time of civil rights. And it's very powerful, and it's told in verse. Marilyn Nelson is a writer poet by trade, and she's also African American. It's part historical novel, part family drama. As the boy is going through this discovery, his father has a stroke, and so there's like this recovery of his relationship with his father and their relationship to history. So that is American Ace by Marilyn Nelson, and I found it partially successful. I found that the history was very interesting in it. The problem is that Marilyn Nelson was on a project when she made this. She was on a project to teach history and to teach this African American racial questioning. She basically came out and said that it was written for white people to read. And that's not that that's particularly a bad thing, and that's a project that she set out about. But there was something about the historical flashbacks and the questioning. There just wasn't much seen. There was a lot of amorphous thoughts and not a lot of a story that moved along, which was very disassociating for me. And I was kind of wondering, well, is that just a novel in verse? Is this kind of just what this form is? And I'm just not familiar with it. And so maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I just don't like this. Moving on, I also read A Time to Dance by Padma Venkatraman. This is a teen book about Veda. She is a very successful dancer in India, and she's a young teenager, and she is getting all these accolades for being this amazing dancer, but right after this super big competition, she is in a car accident and one of her legs has to be amputated to the knee. So she goes from, having her whole life kind of dictated by her ability to use her legs, and then she doesn't have half of a leg. And it's about her ability to reconnect to the spiritual base of this dance, which is deeply rooted in Indian tradition, and also about just kind of realigning herself as a person and the fact that she can still do everything she dreamed of doing even though she has this amputated leg. What was very different about this novel for me is that though it was written in verse, it held a kind of rhythm, like this rhythm of the dance that I really got into, especially when describing the scenes of dancing, but even when not, there was a great emphasis placed on detail with this. I never had to feel like I was out in this amorphous time and space. I was set very specifically with characters, not just the main character, but also with the characters around her. They all had personalities and looks, and the setting was there, and everything that I felt like American Ace didn't accomplish with the form of the novel in verse, this one did. And I went, oh, okay. So now I have one, and one on the other side, and one that I liked and one that I didn't. And again, when you're doing all this reading, you're just like, is this just because I only have two and these are two different styles? What is it about the novel in verse? But then I read the third one. This is Full Cicada Moon by Marilyn Hilton. It's the only one I have in real form. And so I can give you a look at what novel in verse looks like via this one, in case you're curious and don't know what I'm talking about. And this one was very, very interesting. This is the story of Mimi. She is half African American, half Japanese, in 1969 in Vermont. So there is a lot of interracial stuff going on. You know, she is struggling with being one of the few African American appearing people in this very, very white town in Vermont. She also has this Japanese heritage, and you know, people are still very wary about the Japanese in this town. And she wants to be an astronaut, and she's being told that girls can't do science. So there's a lot of like sexism, racism, a bunch of stuff rolling around in this. And the novel is set up as Mimi writing a journal for one of her English classes, struggling to find herself and explain who she is to this English teacher in the hopes that someone will begin to understand where she's coming from. And out of all three, I think this one had the most poetic use of formatting. For instance, there are chapters that look like this and like this. American Ace and A Time to Dance didn't play with this too much, and this one does. But while also having this poetic form, it does the same thing that A Time to Dance does, that I really got a sense of character, a sense of place, a sense of description. And I think for me, this was also the most emotional one. Why is up for personal, you know, consideration, but I think what I really liked about this is that it just felt like the verse form was its natural form. A Time to Dance also felt that way because of the use of dance and the use of the dance rhythm to push the poems along. And so I guess American Ace was just this outlier for me, where it didn't really grab me, it didn't really place me somewhere, it didn't really connect me to characters. It was good and it had a lot of really interesting things to say, but it didn't let you see anything. It was just saying things. Again, if that's what you're into, that's fine. I like me a good description, character. Like if I'm reading a novel, I gotta have something to cling on to, and that's what A Time to Dance and Full Cicada Moon did for me, is that they offered me this lyrical, beautiful, natural novel in verse that also provided the same things that you would generally look for in a novel in their own unique way. After American Ace, I still didn't have a super great, you know, like of novels in verse, but after A Time to Dance and Full Cicada Moon, I've really come to reevaluate my, you know, interest in the genre. I feel like they carried more weight than I expected them to, and that's just because I'm not a poem person, I'm not a verse person. I'm poems usually go way over my head and I don't have the wherewithal to parse them apart. But I really, really love these two books, and I also think that all three of them tackle issues that are very important for various reasons, and I hope that you pick one of them up. Even if it is American Ace, I hope you love it. Thanks, guys. Bye.